All right. So, of course, without further ado, our last speaker of the night, Christina Ivette. She is sharing on trust strategies. And listen, when I first connected with this woman, y'all, I fell in love. I'm not even gonna lie. I was like, you are so heaven sent and divine. I know some of y'all might feel that way about me. I am not on no pedestal. When I met her, I was like, wow, we need you. We need you. We need you. So I am definitely going to open up the floor right now for Christina to take on over and share about trust. So may we welcome her in the chat box.
Thank you so much, Dionne. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest speaker, for inviting me to educate your community. This is such a phenomenal seminar, and I just want to, commend you for even having the strength to do this. And I also want to highlight the other guest speakers, like they were phenomenal, like learning the history about money, like, come on now, that is so valuable. And then learning about like the precious metals and stuff like that, I didn't know. That's why I'm going to hit up Bianca like as soon as like tomorrow morning, like, because that's something that I have not incorporated in my, in my wealth building strategy and in my private life, like, special precious metals. So thank you so much for, for holding space for us and allowing us to, to really soak up this information. So I'm so excited to be here tonight. Hello, everybody. My name is Christina Ivette. I am a trust strategist. So I'm going to be teaching you guys about trust tonight. I have been a trustee since 2015. I'll let you know a little bit about my story. The reason how I got into trust is through a mentor, because I was dealing in real estate, right? And real estate is king, right? It's a tangible asset, and it's something that you have to protect. So you have to go in there, with the mindset that anybody and everybody is looking to take away your property from you, like from the government, from the city, from your neighbor, everyone. So you have to, you have to be protected. And so that's why my mentor told me, if you're going to buy a property, you need to buy a property with a trust. It was so valuable. And that was my first property. So I've never not bought a property without a trust. So I'm grateful that I even had a mentor to teach me the ropes, because, I didn't learn it from my parents, because like Bianca and the others have said, they don't teach us this in school, right? We didn't learn about the history of money. We didn't learn about trust. We didn't learn about any of those things that are so valuable. And so that's why I was so grateful that, that someone actually showed me the ropes so that I could do it the right way. So that's a little bit about my story. And so now let's dive into trust, right? I want to tell you guys everything that I can in, in this short amount of time. I do have some slides that I do want to show. But one thing that I want you guys to know is that I am a trustee, right? I am an advocate for you living private and for you actually, living with a trust and protecting your assets. But I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not, a licensed attorney. I'm not an accountant or anything of that nature. Okay. So just wanted to let you guys know that. So I'm going to share my slides and then we can dive into trust, because I'm trying to take you down this road, especially with what's going on in the economy today. It's kind of like scary times for us. So, so we need to be very strategic, right? So the objective for tonight is for you guys to learn like what a trust is, who are the contributors of a trust, how to operate it, how to set it up, how to protect your assets. Okay. So one thing that I want you guys, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions so you guys can unmute, you guys could be interactive with me. I love that. So how do these companies like pay no taxes, right? You have companies that are big like Amazon. These are billion-dollar companies, right? Trump, billion-dollar companies, Berkshire Hathaway, right? Billion-dollar companies. How is it that they pay no taxes or that they pay very little taxes, right? Because this, the strategy that they use, it actually allows them to build wealth massively, right? And they don't share it with us. Let's just be honest, right? They're not out here telling you, hey, set up a trust so that, you know, you can say, so that you can save money on taxes and you can reduce your liability down to 1%, 2%, zero, whatever it is. They're not telling you this information. And, you know, it's the same information that they are using. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, because when it comes to trust, right, you can use trust for business or you can use trust privately in your private life. So, so just keep that in mind. So now we're talking about money. Money is the topic for tonight. So you have the US dollar here. You have a $1 bill. So now let me ask this question. Does anybody see the word trust in the $1 bill? And I'm going to wait till somebody come off of mute and tell me if they see the word trust.
In God we trust.
Exactly. So you see the word trust, right? So I know that Bianca has mentioned this. I know that Dionne has mentioned this, and Benjamin. So like the United States is a corporation, right? We know that. We know that they are, you know, the United States Inc. And they're a company. And so they operate, you know, with a trust as well, right? So the United States, they operate, they do their business dealings with trust. And then, like Dionne said, right, they put a trust on every single one of us, right? From the minute that we're born, they put, you know, a Sister trust on us. They tie it to an insurance policy and they trade us on the stock market. So if the United States is doing this, do you think that we should also be doing this? Meaning, do you think that we also should have a trust? We also should be operating privately. We also should have insurance on ourselves. The answer is yes, because we have to, you know, we have to beat them at their own game, right? They're playing a game with us. They want us to do all the work to pay off their debt, right? So at this point in time, we are going to play the game, but play it better than them. And that's the whole, you know, that's the whole initiative, is for you to be able to play the game better than them and beat them, right? So just keep that in mind, right? The United States is operating with a trust. They're letting you know in plain sight, right? It's on their money, and they're operating with insurance. Okay, so right now we're in an economic crisis, right? And so they are trying to do away, you know, with the physical money, and they want to, you know, put in digital currency. And why is that? Because they want to be able to control, right? They want to be able to have control over our money, right? So whatever kind of physical assets that you can have now is what you need to be aiming for, right? Because the government, they don't want us to be independent of them. So they want us to be able to rely on their programs. They want us to be able to rely on their housing, right? They want us to be able to rely on them so that we are not operating privately, so that we don't have our own land, so that we don't have, you know, water wells and we are, you know, sourcing our own water, so that we don't have, you know, we're actually getting our energy from the sun, right, with solar panels. So they don't want us to be in that independent position or that private position. They want us to, you know, to be in the system, basically, right? So to be in the system where we are programmed and we are, you know, living by their, you know, their societal norms, right? They want us to work 40 hours for 40 years and retire at 65 years old. And that's not a quality of life. So we're not signing up for that. That's why we are going to do things differently. And that's why seminars like this are so important, because we're getting the education that we need in order to implement it and start doing things differently and getting out of, like Dionne says, the matrix, right? Let's get out of this whole matrix thing, right? So let's just dive into trust, right? So what is a trust entity? And I'm going to read this definition, but then I'll go dive in and tell you guys what a trust is, right? So a trust is an indenture. The other name for indenture is agreement. The other name for agreement is contract, right? So this is a contract and declaration between a business, or it could be private, right? So you could have a private family trust, and it's an agreement between the creator, which is the grantor of the trust, that they have it with the trustees, which is the person who controls the trust, for the benefit of the beneficiaries, right? So it's pretty much a three-party contract, right? You have all these parties involved. So the number one party is the grantor. That's the person who actually created the trust. So the grantor created the trust, and it depends on the type of trust. There are hundreds of trust. So for example, if you have a living trust, then the grantor created the living trust for them, right? They are the beneficiaries, they are the trustees, they are the grantors, right? So it depends on the type of trust, but the grantor has created the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries, okay? Then you have the trustees. The trustee is the individual that is controlling everything. So they're pretty much the owner of the trust, right? They are the ones who are doing the day-to-day operations of the trust. And a trust is an entity. So it's similar to an LLC, it's similar to a corporation, it's similar to you and I, right? Because we're considered entities out here as well. So they can do anything that a living, breathing person can do, right? They can pay bills, they can buy things, they can sell things, they could write a book, they could create a course, they could, drive a car, they could do anything, right? They could own a car, own a house, anything. So with that being said, when it comes to the trust entity, it doesn't have any real limitations or restrictions out here in the United States. So that actually puts you in a good position, because you want to be able to utilize this entity for your benefit, right? Because now this entity can be, out here, it could be out here representing you, and then you can conceal yourself, right? Because people, they don't have to know what you own, right? A lot of us, we are so, we're so tied into, I'm the owner of my house, or I'm the owner of my car, right? We're proud. We are proud to be homeowners. We're proud to, be, our car owners and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, that's a part of the game, right? They want you to be proud. They want you to actually be a part of the public records, because at that point in time, you become like a low-hanging fruit, right? Because once they know, who owns what, they can come after you for your assets if you're not protected. And so that's why a trust is one of the, it's one of the best entities in order to protect yourself. Some people, they use LLCs, they use S corporations, but those have, limited liability. And then another thing is that with those type of entities, they're still tied to the public record. So they're not private, right? So they can look up your entity, your LLC on the Secretary of State's website, and they'll be able to see who the owner is. And then they can pierce the corporate veil if your LLC or your S corporation, if it ends up in court, the judge could pierce the corporate veil and they can go after you for everything that you personally own. That's why it's not safe for you to own things. It's not safe for you to be the owner on paper of your house or your car, because then they can come after you, especially if you're doing, business. And the United States, let's just be honest, like, it's a very sue-friendly country. Like, everybody is trying to sue their neighbor. So you have to protect yourself. So we talked about the parties involved, right? You have the grantor, which is the creator. So with it depends on the type of trust you have. So with an irrevocable trust, right? The grantor actually has no power. So what they do is they actually create the trust, and they create the trust, like I said, for the beneficiary, and then they appoint a trustee and they pretty much walk away from the trust, right? They have no type of power at all. They cannot tell the trustee what to do, right? The trustee has full discretion over what can and cannot be done with the trust, right? So if you are creating, let's say, an irrevocable trust, you do not want to be the grantor, right? Because like we said, the grantor has no power. So you want to appoint someone to be the creator on paper of your trust, and then you want to be the trustee. So you're going to appoint yourself as the trustee, and you are the one who's controlling everything. So you're doing all the buying, all the selling, you're putting the assets, into the trust. You are dealing with the trust funds. You are, doing distributions for the beneficiary, whatever it is that you have to do, the day-to-day operations of, running the trust. That's what the trustee does. Okay. One of the benefits of being a trustee is if the trustee has an asset, let's just say like real estate, if the trust has an asset, right, like a house, the trustee gets to live in that house for free. Right. So that's one of the benefits of being a trustee, right? That you get to benefit from the trust because you're carrying out all the tasks of the trust, right? Another thing, so the trustee is the fiduciary, right? So they are the ones who are dealing legally and lawfully, right? So they are the representatives of the trust. They are the individuals that are doing all the signing. So if the trust is going to go buy a house tomorrow, it's going to be the trustee at the signing table, signing on behalf. If the trust is going to go open up a bank account tomorrow, it's the trustee that's going to be there at the bank, signing to open up that account, right? So they're the ones who have full authority over the trust. So when it comes to you setting up your trust, you already know what position that you need to be in. You need to be in the trustee position, okay? Then you have the beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries are the individuals or the entity that actually benefits from the trust and benefits from the assets of the trust and eventually inherits everything that was in the trust. So the trust has an expiration date. It's not going to live forever. Typically, if you have a business trust, it runs for about 25 years. If you have a private family trust can go for 100 years. And you can always renew the trust as well, right? So you have to renew the trust at least 60 days before it expires. Because once it expires, and then you have to create a new trust, okay? So there's there's families out here that have been running their trust for over 100 years. So you just keep renewing it, right? As the generations go by. So it's very beneficial, to have this type of entity, within your family dynamics, especially if you in the position where you want to build generational wealth and you want to leave stuff for your family, right? So let's just talk about some of the duties, right? We had mentioned some earlier. So the grantor, right? What are they supposed to be doing? So they're the ones who's creating the trust, and they have to appoint a trustee, right? Because if you're having like an irrevocable trust, you're not going to be the trustee. So the grantor has to appoint the trustee, right? Somebody that they that can actually fulfill the duties, right? Because a trustee has a bunch of powers that they need to do, and you have to actually choose somebody who can actually operate in that capacity, right? You can't choose your cousin and they don't even know, anything about, running a trust, right? So you have to choose somebody who, is qualified. With the grantor, right, they can transfer assets into the trust, right? So they could put their house or their car or, any type of asset that they want. But if it's an irrevocable trust, they can't take it back. If it is a revocable trust, they could take it back and they could dissolve the trust whenever they want. So you have to determine, what type of trust you're looking for, right? But then, like I said, then at that point in time, they either walk away from the trust, or if it's a revocable trust, then they, have some type of powers. And then once they pass away, it becomes irrevocable. So with the trustee, what they have to do is they have to appoint a successor. So they have to appoint someone who's going to take over after, after they're done with their term, right? So you can decide how long you want to be the trustee. So if, like, let's just say if the business trust is running for, 20 years and you want to be the trustee for the whole 20 years, you can do that, right? But you have to appoint somebody to take over, because in the event that you become incapacitated, or in the event that you, unexpectedly expire, then someone needs to be able to, fulfill those duties, get into that position, and continue to operate the trust. Another one of their duties is that, they have to invest the funds, right? Because with the trust, the money can't just be sitting there collecting dust, right? They've already talked about inflation, right? They already talked about how, it takes what is it, $1.03 to print $1. So your money needs to be working. And so it's the trustee's job to make the money work. So you have to put the trust funds into investments. If it's real estate, if it's crypto, if it's, stocks, whatever it is, but it's the trustee's job to do that. You can't just have the money sitting there, because then it's going to disappear, right? And that's not the good way to preserve the wealth. The wealth need to be working. The money needs to be working. All right. Then you have the beneficiaries, right? So their job is they pretty much have no power as well. So they can't, they can't make any decisions about the trust, right? They can't say, oh, let's buy this house, let's do that. No, they can't. So their main job is to understand the trust, right? Because you are the beneficiary of the trust. You can't just be walking around here in society blinded and not know, what's in the trust, right? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? What are the responsibilities, right? What are the bylaws? So that's why it's their responsibility. They need to understand what's in the trust. They need to understand what's the job of the trustee, because the trustee is the one who's running the show, but they're running the show for the beneficiary. So that's why they need to understand, because there's a lot of cases out here where you have trustees that are stealing trust funds from beneficiaries, that, that they had millions of dollars in there, and then after 2-3 years, it's all gone because of the trustee. So then you get into the next position, which is a protector. So you have a protector who is there to, protect the beneficiary. So that individual is going to either be appointed by the grantor or appointed by the beneficiary or a board. And they are going to be watching over the trustee just to make sure that they are dealing legally, lawfully, and actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, so that, so that the beneficiaries are protected, right? And that's optional. So if you want to put a protector, you can, because if, like for me, for example, I'm the trustee of my trust, I don't have a protector. I don't need nobody watching over me. But, let's just say in 30 years, whoever the trustee is, I'm probably going to want a protector there, just to make sure that they're doing their job and that my kids are getting what they need to get, right? So like I said, there's a lot of trust. There's hundreds of trusts, right? You have irrevocable trust, you have revocable, you have a land trust dealing with real estate, right? You have charitable trust dealing with different charities and, nonprofit organizations and stuff. You have, a living trust, right? You have a testamentary trust, which is just like a will, right? So with these different types of trusts, you just have to determine like which one is the best one for you. But a lot of these trusts, they can help you, either avoid litigation, or they can protect you, against, against heavy taxation and all this other stuff. So the best type of trust, the one that's actually going to really hold up in court, is an irrevocable trust. I know you guys have heard the term before, and it really is the best type of trust. And the reason why is, I'll give you an example. With a living trust, right, you're the grantor and the trustee with a living trust. If the living trust is to go to court, that is seen as your alter ego. That is seen as just an extended version of you, just like an LLC, right? So it's not going to really protect you in court as much as an irrevocable. When it's an irrevocable, there's no grantor trustee relationship. Then at that point in time, it that type of trust, it needs to be pierced. And like I said, trusts fall into contract law, it falls into trust law. So the judge is not going to be out here wanting to pierce your trust, especially if it's an irrevocable trust, right? So trusts are very hard to be sued, but they can be sued. And a lot of people think that they can't, but they can. They can be sued, especially like, for example, if your car is in a trust and the car gets into an accident, you're going to get into some type of, legal issues, right? So the trust is going to be sued by the insurance company or by, the other person who was involved in the accident. So a trust can be sued, but it's very hard. And you have attorneys out here that, when they see that it's in a trust, the house is in a trust, or the car is in a trust, or the situation, the business is owned by a trust, they are very hesitant to even take your case. And then it depends on the type of trust that you have too. So you have trusts that have that are set up by attorneys, and they have jurisdictions within the state. And then you have non-statutory trust, which means that they do not fall within the jurisdiction of the state or the statutory or the statutes of the United States of America. And so at that point in time, if you were to be sued, like, you would have to go to the Supreme Court to be sued. So the type of trust that you want is a non-statutory trust. The type of trust that you want is a complex trust. So let's talk about how to create a trust, right? Like, okay, we already know that we want a trust. How do we create one, right? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to figure out what type of trust you want, right? Do you want a living trust? Do you want a revocable trust where you could take stuff back? Or do you want an irrevocable trust where you appoint someone else to be your grantor, right? And like I said, the most protected one is the irrevocable. After that, you're going to, just like creating any other type of entity, you're going to pick a name for the trust. When it comes to naming the trust, you do not have to have the name trust in it. Okay, so let's just say that you wanted it to be, 123 Main Street. That's the name, right? It doesn't have to be 123 Main Street Trust, right? Because at the end of the day, we are operating in the private. So if you're out here using your entity, you do not want people to know that it's a trust. So I personally wouldn't put the word trust. Some people do. They like the name trust, some don't. So it just depends. But you do not have to have the word trust in there. You could also use other initials too. So if you wanted to use the letters LLC, you can. If you want to use the word corp, you can. If you want to use the word Inc., you can. So in the if you're using this type of trust, it's going to look like an LLC, but it's not. It's going to look like an Inc., right? An incorporated, but it's not. So you are, you're able to do that. And so especially when you are operating a business trust, it's nice to have those types of abbreviations at the end. Okay. So you figured out a name. And so now what you're going to do is you are going to appoint somebody to be the grantor. So if you appoint yourself, then you're going to be creating a living trust. If you appoint someone else, like a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, a father, if you want it to be your parents, your siblings, whoever you want, that is able to notarize your trust, right? It can't just be a complete stranger. You could do that. You could also choose an entity too. So a lot of people don't know that, if you already have an existing trust, that trust could be the grantor of this trust, right? So after you choose who the grantor is, then you're going to choose the trustee. So you're either going to be choosing yourself or someone else. You can choose your beneficiaries. So obviously, sometimes our beneficiaries, right, are our children. If you don't have children, your loved ones. And then it depends on what structure you have too. So for example, with your business trust, you want your beneficiary to be your family trust, because you want all of the money from your business trust to flow into your family trust. And then once you have your family trust, the beneficiaries of your family is going to be your children. So that's a good way in order for you to determine who your beneficiaries are going to be. And then you also need to figure out what their percentage is, right? Based on 100%. So let's just say that there's, 100% ownership, right? Then you have to figure out, what percentage each beneficiary gets, and it just needs to equal 100. And then you're going to choose a successor. So who's going to take over after you? It could very well be a beneficiary. So if you want your oldest son to take over after you, then that's an excellent idea, and they can definitely do that, right? And it's okay for them to be the trustee and the beneficiary as long as they are not the only beneficiary, right? Then after you have chosen, all the parties involved and you've chosen a name, you're going to create your trust agreement, right? So you're going to create your contract. You're going to, plug and play. So you're going to put, the names where they need to be. And then once your contract is finalized, then you're going to get it notarized. That's what makes this entity legal, is it being notarized. So you go to any, notary in your state and they can notarize your trust, right? Sometimes going to your bank to get stuff notarized is not the best option because banks have restrictions. Those notaries have restrictions. So go to an outside notary, not in a bank. Then after that, after your trust is legalized and it's notarized, you can start operating it like same day, right away. So what you want to do in order to jumpstart the operation of your trust is you want to open up a trust bank account and deposit trust funds in there, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to open up a bank account. And sometimes with these banks, it depends on the bank that you go to. They're going to ask you for your trust documents, but your trust documents are private. So it's up to you if you want to disclose your private contract or if you say no and you go to the next bank. So I would recommend that you keep your trust private and that you say no and you go to the next bank that's going to open up your trust without having to see your trust. Okay. Some of these institutions, these financial institutions, they are going to ask you to fill out a certificate of and that certificate is letting them know that yes, this is a real trust, even though they are not physically seeing the trust, right? So it's a real entity. That's what they want to know, because guess what? They can't look up your entity on the public records like they would your LLC, right? As soon as you go to the bank and you're trying to open up an LLC, they're like, oh, I don't need no paperwork for you. I'm just going to the Secretary of State and they can see everything. It's in plain sight. They can't do that with the trust. So they need you to certify that this is for real, right? Another thing that you can do is you have a declaration, right? Which is the first few pages of your trust. And with that declaration, you can just provide that. So you don't have to show your whole trust. All you have to show is a declaration, which is like 2 to 3 pages. And it's notarized and it's letting them know, hey, I have a trust and this is what the trust talks about. And it's just 1 page describing what's in the trust, but they're not going to see your trust, right? Your trust could be anywhere between 20 to 40 pages. So you're not going to bring all of that with you. You're going to bring 2 pages with a little summary and it's notarized saying, hey, this is a real thing. So after you open up your bank account, you are going to make a deposit. So the deposit is going to be from the human person, right, to your trust. And this deposit, it could be anything, $100, 200, 300, 1,000, whatever you want. But that's going to be a loan. Okay, so you as the trustee, you can issue loans to the trust and you can receive loans from the trust. So you're going to issue a loan to the trust, and in return, the trust is going to give you a promissory note for, the $200 loan plus interest. Okay, because you're going to get that money back. And then after that, you can now transfer assets, right? That's like the most important thing. And that is the thing that a lot of people skip. I've seen it too many times before, that they have a trust and they don't use the trust. They have a trust and they don't transfer anything into the trust, right? It just is, is a stack of papers, a contract, and it starts to collect dust because we, don't know how to operate a trust. So you need to learn how to, operate your trust. And once you get your trust, transfer your assets ASAP. And we could talk about, what it looks like to transfer assets. So for example, let's just say that you're transferring a house. You have a house, you have a primary residence. That primary residence is in your name. All you have to do is get a quit claim deed, and you deed it over from your personal name to the trust, right? So you're going to put your name on there, on there, and you're going to put the trust, and you're going to notarize it. You're going to go down to the county recorder's office, and you're going to record the quitclaim deed. They're going to update the public records, and now your trust is the owner of that house. If you have a mortgage, that's perfectly okay, because you can still do this with a mortgage, right? And now the trust is going to be the one responsible for paying those mortgage payments. Now that the trust owns the house, the trust is going to pay the property taxes, all of the utilities in that home, and the mortgage payment, and whatever else, is involved as far as maintenance and everything else, right? Okay, so that's one example of how to transfer assets. It's very, it's very straightforward. It doesn't take a lot. Some people think that they have to sell their house to the trust. You do not have to sell your house. It's a gift. You gift your house to the trust, and it's $0 involved. Okay, so that's that, right? I had a client who, her father, he actually created an irrevocable trust. He was older, so he created irrevocable trust, and then he passed away. And she was coming to me for help because she didn't understand, what she had to do, like if there was any transfer involved. So come to find out that the father, even though he had an irrevocable trust, he never transferred his house into the trust. So he had the documents but didn't use them. And so his two daughters end up having to go to probate because, the transfer was never done. So please do not skip that step. Okay. And then you just operate your trust. So you operate it as if you would a business, as if you would yourself, whatever it is that you want to do. Okay. Like I said, if you want to write a book, but you want it to be anonymous, right? The trust is now the author of the book, right? So whatever it is that you want to do. So asset protection, right? So this is the number one reason why you want a trust, for asset protection and 100% privacy, right? Like I said, it is the public records it just has your social security and your name everywhere, right? Somebody can go into your county, your property, they can do a property search in your county, and they can put your first and last name, and every single property that you own in that county will come up, or vice versa. They can put your home address, and your name and your address is going to come up. Even your telephone number, sometimes I've seen. So you don't want that, right? You don't want to be exposed that way because, like I said, you're going to be the low-hanging fruit. And that's not what you want. You want to be protected out here. You want to be shielded out here. You don't want everyone to know what your net worth is or how many houses you own or, anything like that. So you do not want to be the owner of your house, your car, your bank accounts, any of that stuff. You want all that stuff to be owned by your entity, by your trust. So the trust can protect you from a lot of things, right? It can protect you from bankruptcies, from heavy taxation, divorce, lawsuit, foreclosures, probates. So let's talk about divorce real quick, right? So let's just say that that you're married and you've been married for 10 years. And in the last 2 years, you've been picking up property, you've been putting that property under a trust, right? And, either your spouse knows or doesn't know, it doesn't matter, right? Now your spouse decides to divorce you or you decide to divorce your spouse. The properties that are under the trust are not your properties. Those are not your assets. So they cannot be included in your divorce settlement, in your, lawsuit with your divorce. So that's going to protect you, right? So the only thing that's going to be included is whatever you got in your personal name, whatever you got with your spouse, your primary residence, things of that nature. So think about that. The trust is the only thing that's going to protect you against probate. So I'm not sure if you guys know what probate is, but that's when you have to, your estate has to go through the litigation process in order to have that transfer of assets and that transfer of wealth. So for example, let's just say that your mom has a house and right now that house is in her personal name. How is that house going to get into your name if she wants you to have the house when she passes away? So if she passes away tomorrow, then what? How is that house going to be put into your name? That means that you have to go through probate now. That's the only way for you to get your name on the deed of your mom's home. You got to go through probate. That means you got to get the courts involved. That means you have to get legal representation from a lawyer. And before you get anything, there's going to be estate tax. There's going to be a death tax. There's going to be an inheritance tax because the government is going to get theirs. Then you have court fees and you have lawyer fees. And whatever's left over is what you get. So in that scenario or situation, do you really want to go through that? Or do you really want to put your kids through that? You have to think about it because we are so focused on building generational wealth. We're so focused on, getting the bag, getting the houses and the cars and all this stuff. But we don't think about how we're going to transfer to our kids. What does that look like? This is what it looks like. It looks like if you don't have your affairs in order, then the court is going to make the decisions for you. And your kids are going to end up in probate. And that's you doing a disservice to your children. Why? They're grieving right now from your loss. And you're going to drag them through court. When all of this could have been avoided if you decided to put your house in a trust, or you decided to put your insurance policy into a trust, or you decided to put your car and whatever assets that you possess in a trust. So that's why it's private. That's why you get that protection. Because the way you avoid probate is if those assets are in a trust, there is no transfer of wealth, right? There's no transfer that needs to be made, right? It's not like probate to where they have to they remove your parents' name, they put a estate of your parents' name, and then from there, after the probate is done, it goes from the estate of your parent to your personal name. That's the transfer. So you avoid all of that because the owner of the asset is the trust. You are the beneficiaries, or your children are the beneficiaries, so there's no transfer. because they're already the owners, because you're already the owners, right? So that's the best thing, or the best way to go about transferring wealth, right? Same thing with foreclosures, right? You can avoid foreclosure on your house if you're 2-3 years behind by putting it in a trust. Same thing with lawsuits, right? Some lawyers, I'm telling you, they run away from trust situations. They're like, no, I can't handle that. Especially if it's non-statutory, right? You have a lawyer who's in whatever state, let's just say Georgia, because Dionne's in Georgia, right? You have a lawyer in Georgia and they look at a trust, but it's a non-statutory trust. They don't have jurisdiction. That lawyer only has jurisdiction in Georgia. So that's why, you could be protected from those things. Same thing with heavy taxation, right? Taxes is just, we talked about it, right? They're going to get their 50%, right? Do you still want to give up 50%? No, you don't, because you actually saving on taxes is actually going to help you build wealth faster. It's going to help you get from point A to point B faster, right? So let me just give you some examples of heavy taxation, right? So like I said about the death tax, the estate tax, the inheritance tax, that's all, when you die. But what about when you're living, right? So how is a trust taxed? It depends on the type of trust, right? So if you have a business trust, usually it is taxed at 38%. If it is, if you do like a distribution, right? So you could actually keep the money in the trust and not be taxed. Or what this entity could do is it could distribute 100% of the money and not be taxed, right? So now you have, let's just say you're doing business, right? You're doing business, you made $100,000 and that $100,000 went into your business trust. What you're going to do is you're going to distribute 100% of that into your private family trust, right? So now your business trust, because you distributed 100%, the tax liability is zero, right? You're not taxed because you distributed it, right? So now the $100,000 is in your private family trust. So at that point in time, you're going to expend everything that you need to expend for your family, right? Because the expenses are for the benefit of the beneficiary. So the beneficiary are your children, right? So you have private school tuition, you have mortgage, you have car note, gas, groceries, insurance policies, everything is going to come out of there, right? And then whatever is left, because with these type of entities, they're taxed different from us, right? So we are taxed first and we get whatever's left over. But with the entity is, they spend first and then they're taxed on whatever's left over. So what you want to do is you want to expand to the part where there's not that much left over. So whatever is left over at that point in time, you can actually donate it, right? So you can either be taxed, let's just say 20,000 is left over. You can decide if you want to pay taxes on that 20,000, or you can donate it. You can donate it to your ministry trust, to your faith-based organization, to your tax-exempt trust, right? Or, any other type of entity, whatever it is that you want. But if you have a ministry trust, then you are going to be donating to yourself because that's your trust. And then you get to do whatever you want with it, right? So you get to, do all your charitable things, right? Whatever charities that you have going on within your organization, versus giving it to the IRS. You might as well give it to yourself. So at that point, after you're done donating it to your tax exempt trust, your liability is zero. And this is all legal. And it's all within the IRS code, right? The IRC. So, so that's one with heavy taxation. Another thing, I love to give this example is about Steph Curry, right? Jesus, Steph Curry, he's a good basketball player. He had a contract for $250 million. Do you know how much he paid in taxes? He paid $148 million in taxes. That is absolutely insane, especially because he's in the state of California. So if he was operating with a trust, he could have kept almost all of that. But instead, he's not protected like a lot of the athletes and, people that they don't know, right? And so just gave up half to the IRS when we know that taxes is voluntary, right? So that's absolutely insane. So that's how you can actually, like start to build your wealth faster by not giving it away. So Dionne had touched on this. Benjamin had touched on it. Bianca had touched on it. So I'm also going to touch on it too. So wealth building formula, right? Because right now we're in scary times, and what we need to do is we need to build wealth. We need to preserve wealth. We need to get private. There's just so much that we need to do, right? So how are you going to be structured? This is how I'm structured. This is how a lot of people that I know are structured. This is how people in my community are structured. So as far as structure, let's just say that you have a business. I'm not sure if there's entrepreneurs out here, but let's just talk about it, right? Let's just say that you have a business, you have an LLC, you got an S corporation, whatever it is, right? That business is in the public records, like we said, right? They can go to the Secretary of State, they can look up your business. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to create a business trust that's going to act as a holding company or a parent corporation. That business trust is now going to be the owner of your LLC or your S corp, right? And it's very easy to do that. So once you have legalized that business trust, all you have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website, do an amendment, remove yourself as the owner, and then put your business trust as the new member or, member or officer of that business, okay? And then once it's processed, it's updated on the Secretary of State's website and your name is no longer there, right? You get somebody to be a representative as your registered agent. So now when somebody looks up your business, it's blind, right? It's concealed. They cannot see that you are the owner of that business. So that's step one. And that's your first layer of asset protection. That's your first layer. Then that business trust needs a beneficiary. That beneficiary is going to be your private family trust because your business is your bread and butter, right? That's where you generate the money in order to take care of your family. So you want that money to flow from your business to your private family trust so you can take care of your family. So then the private family trust is going to be the beneficiary, okay? Then after that, you want to incorporate a tax-exempt trust, a ministry trust. There's so many names, right? You got faith-based organization, tax-exempt, nonprofit trust, ministry trust, what's the other name? There's a lot of other names for it, but they're all interchangeable. And that's the type of trust that you want, a 508c1a trust. Okay. So it is one of the exceptions in the IRC when it comes to nonprofits, right? Well, we know about a nonprofit. You are usually a 501c3, but with that, you have to apply, right? And then they have to approve you, and then you have to show your financials, and they have a lot of restrictions, right? Freedom of speech being one of them, right? They're always going to have restrictions. So when you're dealing with a trust, guess what? Those restrictions go away. So you don't have your freedom of speech being hindered. 1, 2, you don't have to report your financials. You don't have to file any taxes with the IRS. You are already grandfathered in. It's one of the exceptions, right? One of the exceptions is if you are operating this type of designated trust, but your trust needs to say in the agreement, I am designated as a 508c1a, right? So like I said, when you have that type of trust within your structure, you just donate it to yourself. And then when that, the money that you donated to yourself, you do what you need to do with that money, right? Whatever it is. Like tax exempt trust or nonprofit trust, they can invest, right? They can buy property, right? They can do all these things too, instead of giving it to the IRS. Right? So that's one. Two, so you need to be structured properly like yesterday. If you're not structured like this, if you still have your, you still using your social security, if you still have your name, that's searched on the public records, you need to, get restructured. Then credit, right? Credit. So you could actually use a business trust and you can create or build corporate credit with that. But you have to be mindful, because at the end of the day, now you are bringing a private entity into the public by creating a credit profile for it, right? So some people decide, no, it's not worth it. But some people decide, yeah, I need to, just create a business trust for this specific, purpose. And knowing that, hey, this is the public trust, but then I have a private one that, I'm also doing business with. Okay. But with the 508c1a trust, you can actually get nonprofit grants too, because it's a nonprofit. It's a legitimate nonprofit. So you can get grants with that type of trust. Okay. And then invest, right? So that's what we've been talking about, right? We've been talking about what are you going to do, right, with this economic crisis, right? Dionne talked about insurance, and insurance is just so valuable. I'm going to touch on it right now because it's scary to me, the amount of people that, one, don't have insurance, or two, don't know how to use insurance the way they supposed to use insurance, right? So let's talk about it. Insurance. There's a lot of different policies out here. You have term life, whole life, index, universal life. So me, and I'm talking from experience, right? Because I have an index universal life insurance policy, right? But with that type of policy, when it deals with the trust, right, what you want is an insurance policy. You have to understand is an asset. It is just like a house, is just like, a car, just like crypto, just like cash money in your bank, whatever. It's an asset. Okay. So there's a death benefit tied to it, which makes it an asset, because that money is promised to you in the event that you expire. Right? But what you want to do is you have a trust. That trust needs to take out a policy on you. You are the insured. The trust is the owner of the policy and the beneficiary of the policy. So you have to understand that you are a human asset as well. Sometimes we won't look at ourselves like that when we need to. You need to look in the mirror and say, I'm a human asset. Okay. So you are a human asset when it comes to your trust, because we already know that the trust is nothing without you if you don't operate it. Like I said, it's a stack of papers. So you are the human asset for your trust. You need to be insured. The trust is going to take out a policy on you. The trust is going to be the owner and the beneficiary. And when you expire, the trust is going to get paid. Okay, so the trust, the death benefit is going to go straight to the trust bank account. So now we're talking about preservation of wealth, right? You done built all this wealth, but how do you preserve it? You preserve it through insurance, because once you lose a human asset, you need to be compensated. Right? I lost a trustee. I lost a beneficiary. I need to be compensated. I need a couple million for that. Okay. So that's one. Two, how you use your insurance policy is so valuable. So with this policy, like Dionne said, you build cash value, right? But a lot of people think that your policy is for when you die. It's not. It's supposed to be used when you are living. Okay. So let's just get this disbelief out of our head, right? Now, how do you use it? You use it as a private bank. I know you've heard of the terms infinite banking. You've heard of the terms private family banking, be your own bank. This is what I'm talking about. We need to put ourselves in position to where we are paying ourselves first. We never do it. We always pay ourselves last, right? How were we taught? We were taught you get paid on Friday, then you pay up all your bills, right? Your rent, mortgage, grocery, everything. And then whatever's left over, you save that 10%, right? You got $100 left over, you put in your savings account. That's how we're trained. No. Before you pay your mortgage, before you pay your car note, before you put groceries in your refrigerator, you are going to pay your insurance policy. You are going to pay yourself first. So this is how it works. You're going to overfund your policy so that you are exponentially building cash value, right? So let's just say that I got a $10,000 today, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a deposit into my insurance policy before I spend a dime. It's going to go straight into my insurance policy. My insurance policy, mind you of the name, right? So Index Universal Life Insurance Policy. Index stands for, an indice. It's tied to the market. It's tied to the stock market. You have different indices. You have the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500. You can choose whatever indice you want. I am in the S&P 500, okay? It's diversified. It's wonderful, right? So with that, you know that you are getting interest because the market, typically gives you 8, 9, 10%, right? So you already know that you are going to be getting interest. So that $10,000 that I just deposited into my insurance policy, my cash value went up by 10,000, and now that's going to be invested, and I'm going to get, and I don't mean invested, but I mean, I'm going to get a return for that. I'm going to get 10% because it's tied to the market. It's not in the market. It's just that they look at the market and they look at your asset and they match them. But your money is parked. It's not in the market. Okay. So another thing is they cap you. So you can make anywhere with an IUL policy, you can make anywhere between 0 to 10%. Right? So if the market is doing 15, you only getting 10. If the market is doing -2, you getting 0. So there's no risk involved, right? The lowest you can get is 0. So if the market crashed tomorrow, you getting 0. 0 is okay, right? With a whole life policy is guaranteed, but it's lower returns. Like you're going to be making 3%, maybe 4. So I want to build wealth fast, right? I want to build wealth in my youth, not when I'm 70 years old. So I want to be making 10% tomorrow. So with that being said, your cash value went up by 10,000. Now what you're going to do, you need that money, right? You have to pay for groceries. You have to pay a mortgage. So you are going to call up the insurance company, or you do it online. Everything is done, virtually, where you're going to take out a loan. You're going to take out a loan for that $10,000. So that loan is going to come from your insurance company. It's not going to come from your policy. So that 10K is still sitting in your policy, but now the insurance company just made a direct deposit into your account tomorrow for $10,000. Now that $10,000, you get to now spend it and use it on your groceries, your mortgage, your tuition. Okay, so that is the definition of you paying yourself first. You have to. So that's how you're in this position of building wealth. And with that loan that you took from your insurance company, like I said, that money came from them. It didn't touch your policy. You don't have to pay that loan back, right? That loan gets taken out of your death benefit. So you don't have to pay it back if you don't want to, but your money is going to grow a little bit lower, right? Because let's just say that you was going to make 10%, but you took out the loan, they're going to charge you 3%. So you're going to net 7, right? So some people, they decide, yeah, I do want to pay the loan back. Some people are like, forget it. I'll settle with the 7. So it's up to you, right? But you have to incorporate insurance into your structure. Another thing is that insurance is tax-free. That's one. 2 is that insurance is liquid, right? It's not like real estate where you have to sell a property and it might take 30 days, 60 days, 100 days. You don't know, right? If you need money tomorrow, are you able to get the money tomorrow? No, your property is going to sit on the market and all this other stuff, right? So insurance is liquid, right? Tomorrow you get the money, today you get the money, okay? So definitely tap in with the insurance, right? If you have an insurance policy already, all you have to do is call up your insurance company and tell them that you want to change the ownership and the beneficiary. They're going to email you a form and you fill it out, submit it, and boom, your trust is now the owner and the beneficiary. There is a 3-year rule, meaning if you do that, right, if you change the ownership to the trust, you can't die within 3 years. If you die within the 3 years, then they are going to take out money from your death benefit. So remember I said you got estate taxes and inheritance taxes. They take it from your insurance policy, from your death benefit. But if your policy is owned by a trust, guess what? It's not subject to estate tax. It's not subject to inheritance tax. Why? Because it's owned by an entity and not by a human person. So that's why the IRS got that 3-year rule. So if you transfer the ownership into a trust and you die within 3 years or less, right, then they're going to tax you. But if it's past the 3 years, then you're safe. But if you take out a new policy as a trust, the 3-year rule does not exist. It's non-existent, okay? And then real estate, right? So you already know that when it comes to real estate, you need to put your properties in a trust. That's 1. 2, if you put your property in the 508c1a, the tax exempt trust, you are exempt from property taxes. So that's a couple of $1,000s that you are saving on, right? Because you don't have to pay property taxes, right? My taxes are $6,000, but I don't have to pay them. I'm exempt, right? Because my property is in a 508c1a designated trust. Okay, so that's savings. Now that $6,000 that I would have had to pay to the county for property taxes, I get to now put it somewhere else. Okay, so think about that. But when it comes to these economic times, like you need to be buying up real estate. You need to be buying up or investing or putting your money into something that's tangible, right? Something that you can see, touch, feel. Because that's what they're trying to take you away from. They don't want you to be private. They don't want you to have land. They don't want you to grow a garden and eat from your garden. They don't want you to dig a well and provide your own water for yourself. They don't want you to have solar panels and provide your own energy for yourself. They want you to be dependent on the government and the system. So that's how you're able to, incorporate real estate within this. And let's see what else we got. So the transfer of wealth, right? So the transfer of wealth, like I said, I touched on it earlier, is super easy, right? Whatever is in the trust, just put all your assets in the trust, okay? And whoever you want to benefit from your assets, you put them as a beneficiary. When you pass away, there's no transfer that needs to be done because they are the owners. They are the beneficiaries. When the trust is dissolved, then the properties or, the accounts, whatever it is deeded to them, right? Or if they don't want to be a part of the trust anymore, let's just say you have a child and they're like, no, I don't want to be a part of the trust, then they can, give up their position as a beneficiary, and everything that's entitled to them, right? Let's just say 25% of all of the assets is going to be deeded over to them, and they are going to submit their trust certificate units. So the way that you transfer wealth is utilizing UBI, which are units of beneficial interest, or what we call trust certificate units. So your trust is going to issue 100 TCUs, trust certificate units. They're just like stock certificates. You're going to issue them to your beneficiaries. So let's just say that you have 4 kids, you want them to have equal, beneficial interests. You're going to issue 25 trust certificate units to each child. So that's how it is. So that's how the transfer of wealth is represented, right? It's the same thing as like ownership in a company with stocks, is the same thing as beneficial interest or ownership in a trust with certificates. Okay. So stewardship is important. Stewardship is when you are a good steward of your wealth. And so you own nothing but control everything. Right now, if you are the owner of all of your assets, then you are operating in ownership. You need to switch that and operate in stewardship, where you are the controller, not the owner. That's really what it is. You want to be able to control your house, do whatever you want, dispose of it. If you want to put a tenant in there tomorrow, put a tenant in there tomorrow. But you don't have to be the owner on paper. You don't need to let, every single body in your county or in the country know. So these are some books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's a really good book. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. Those are really good books dealing with trust, dealing with, building wealth, dealing with insurance. You'll learn a lot about insurance with that. Family Wealth. Family Wealth is a really good book. I actually have it right here. With that book, you learn about trust, you learn about insurance, you learn about preserving your wealth, so that it lasts for generations, right? How many times have you heard that, somebody had an enormous amount of wealth and by the 2nd or 3rd generation, it was gone? Why? Because they didn't create the wealth, right? They just spent the wealth. Because there was no rules and regulations in place, because the money wasn't in a trust to where you have bylaws. And the last book I recommend is The Complete Book of Trust, which is really good. It tells you all about, like I said, there's hundreds of trusts. So if you want to learn about trust and which one's right for you, you could definitely get that book. That's definitely a good book. And then the last thing that I want to tell you guys is take action. Right? We all said it today. Bianca said it, Dionne said it, Benjamin said it. Take action on the information that we are giving you guys, because it's one thing to actually receive the knowledge, but it's another to apply the knowledge, right? So, you already know you got to get precious metals. You already know that you need to know, what's next with the digital currency. You already know that you need to operate in the private, right? Have a trust, right? So the trust that you're going to create is your new form of doing business, because everything is contracts, right? The lights are on in my house right now. That's a contract between me and the utility company. This whole world is run off of contracts, right? So now, instead of dealing contracts between your personal self, you deal contract to contract. You deal trust to, the other entities. That's how you need to be doing business, right? and make it a profit. This can solve a lot of your problems and provide exceptional asset protection and tax savings if you operate it the right way. Because there's a lot of people that have trust and they choose not to do anything with it. Or they got trust and the person that they got their trust from didn't teach them how to operate a trust. Things of that nature, right? Or procrastination, it could be anything. So once you get your trust, begin to operate and use your trust, right? Treat it like as if it was Google, as if it was Facebook, as if it was Amazon. Treat it like that, because then you're going to be able to save on taxes, grow your wealth faster, transfer your wealth the right way, and operate in the private so that nobody's in your business and they just can't come and take your property. So here's my contact information if you guys need it. It was an absolute pleasure, and I'm all for answering questions. So I'm gonna dive into the chat, or if somebody wants to come off of mute and answer and ask their questions, or Dionne, whatever, whatever you want me to do next, let me know. But I'll look in here and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, feel free to answer questions. If y'all have questions, use the chat box, or you can come off your mic.
Somebody said the notary is the real judge.
That was me.
What about assets in another country? Can I put those assets in my trust here? That is a good question. So, the trust, it depends on the type of trust. If you have a foreign trust, then absolutely yes. But I'm not sure, it depends on your trust. So if you have a trust that, that is only here for the United States, then I would tell you no. So it just depends. But if you have a foreign trust, then you are flexible. 50% estate tax, you pay more in taxes. Okay. Looking for questions. Yes. Let's see. So also with whole life, you're only getting either the death benefit or the cash value. IUL, when it's structured properly, you have the sum of both. That's perfect. Look at that person. Awesome. IUL is 10 times better. I wouldn't even waste my time on a whole life policy. Before I had an IUL policy, I had a term life policy, and I didn't realize that I was wasting money because I wasn't building cash value. So it's really important who you get your life insurance policy with, because not all of it is the same. One thing I want to tell you guys when it comes to building cash value, you have to understand, and this is no offense to any insurance agents. I'm not an insurance agent. I don't sell insurance. I only know what I know because I got policies on everybody. Okay. So insurance agents, that's their bread and butter. So they are going to feed their family based on the commission of your policy. You have to go to the right insurance agent who is willing to reduce their commission so that you can build cash value faster. Okay, so and they are the ones who actually structure your policy. So you need to make sure how they structure it. So I know 2 insurance agents, right? One, she actually locks her clients in to where they cannot take any cash value for 12 months. The insurance agent that I used, he doesn't lock you in. So I was able to start tapping into my cash value at 3 months. I was building cash value by the 3rd month. But insurance people out here that they actually have a high commission, they're going to tell you 12 to 18 months is when you're going to start building cash value. So just pick the right person. Let me see. Money, whole life. Look before you died. Okay, let's see. Guess that's why Nationwide is on your side. That's funny. Let me see. Is there any other questions? Can we put our marriage certificate in a trust? I've never been asked this question. And is your marriage certificate an asset? Like, is there a way for your marriage certificate to have some form of ownership?
I'll take this one if you don't mind.
Okay.
The marriage certificate is a license. It is a contract made with the state. It does have its securities attached to it, which is why through the UCC, we put a lien on it. I personally would authenticate it, remove it out of the jurisdiction before I did put it into a trust, because you can put a lien on that. But I would take control of it first, because the property would be considered. And this is why when I started talking today, we talked about who the property all belongs to, who we even belong to, and why we take control of ourselves first in the process. Can we, pick up with where we happen to learn? Yes. But I would first get control of that asset, which it is. And then with the UCC, put a lien on it. And then once you do that, and that's with the financing statement, a UCC financing statement. And once you do that, then you can list it in your trust minutes.
And that's why this seminar is so important. Thank you, Dionne. You educate
Absolutely.
You educating me. But now my question is, what if you get a divorce? Can you still do it? Is there something there, or if you get a divorce, then there's no securities and all that stuff?
I would do the same process. And I would also add an affidavit of truth I would file in the county to do a nullify proclamation of that marriage. And I would create my own marriage certificate just in the same instance, I would create my own certificate of live birth for my offspring, because whenever we're using their applications or their license, remember, it's under their jurisdiction. It belongs to them. So they believe whenever something belongs to them, they can tell you what to do with it. They can tell you how to operate with it. That's the whole point, because they're it's ours. We control it, which means we control you. But if you're creating your own, and there's no law that says you cannot create your own certificate of live birth, your own identifications and all of this, which all goes under the umbrella of status correction, because it's its own umbrella in itself. But that's how I would go about those type of things, because everything we had. So when you think of your estate, ESTATE, your estate is anything you've acquired with your social securities, with your SIN number, with your NIN number. So if you don't take control of your estate and you're purchasing properties, well, you're purchasing, but who do you belong to? In legal, that's a legal question, not a spiritual one. Lawfully, we know we belong to a creator. We come and go from that. But legally, we're considered a part of a trust that belongs to someone else. So knowing trust, and you think about who's the owner of that trust, and when they put their assets, which we are their assets, into their trust, what does that mean? So that's how deep it goes. That's why I started out with literally, Brianna, getting control of your straw man, because we literally are still collecting property like Monopoly, but who's the owner of this game right now? So until we take control of ourselves, we're still considered someone else's property. we are our biggest asset. We must secure us first, always. It's nice to secure all of the things of this world, but at the end of the day, we're our biggest asset. And we leave that on the table. That's our title. That's the title to our life until we create our own. So, did I answer your question, love?
Yeah, that was powerful.
It's deep. It's so deep. It's so deep, but we got to start somewhere. So
like baby steps, baby steps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, as when you have a marriage license in the trust, you said it's an asset and you could take out a lien on it. Can you make money on that?
You don't take out a lien on it. You put a lien on it.
Okay.
You put a lien on it. You put a lien on all your assets. That's your collateral. You would use or create, some people handwrite it, the UCC, however you want to do it, the financing statement, and you put a lien on your property and your birth certificate, your marriage certificate. I'll say it again. Anything that you acquired with giving your social security number, you want to put a lien on it. This is a whole other conversation and ball game, especially if you're hearing it for the first time. It can be a lot. So I would just start with looking up the UCC financing statements for your county, and you'll see it looks like a very, very simple form, but it can be more complex once you start getting into it. And I never recommend anybody just jump into anything, doing things willy-nilly, because that can get messy in a sense where it's like, you just want to know what you're doing. So I do have a UCC webinar. If you're interested in that, you can DM me UCC on Instagram. But yeah, again, any property that you've acquired with your social security number, SIN or NIN number, you want to make sure that you put a lien on all of that as well. Because the trust is one thing, but for sure, these counties and these courthouses, they check those files, and what you can always have as your evidence is that you put a lien on all the assets, so nothing gets left on the table. That's just me. I like to dot my I's and cross my T's.
All right,
That's the best way to do it.
No crumbs.
No crumbs left behind.
No crumbs at all. There was a lot of things that came up. Can we just show Christina some love in the chat box? Because man, oh man, my goodness, that was heavy. And I sat back here, I learned a lot myself. And I was even just saying, like, there's so much to all this, right? So I'm so grateful. I told y'all, as soon as I heard her, I'm like, oh, I fell in love right away. Like, I need you in my life. Nothing is like, if I could think of like 3 definite people you've got to have in your life, is a notary. Become friends with a notary. My God, they are so powerful. Having a notary around, trust it, because you're going to always need them to be notarizing documents. A trust specialist in your corner, because trust is king. You got to have a trust specialist in your corner. And then someone, if you can, a tax specialist. I highly recommend, because this is the thing here. And even when I'm hearing Christina speak, we have to tell people how we want to do business. We have to stop playing the position of, what was me? I don't know. No, we all said at the beginning, we are powerful. We have to act that way. We have to walk that way. We have to talk that way. We have to know our stuff. We can't depend on the world to educate us. We have to educate ourselves. So literally, when I walk up into a bank, when I'm dealing with the attorney, when I'm dealing with a tax professional, I tell them how I want to be structured. I don't come in there, ask questions. I know when I need to play the I don't know anything, but we can't sit here and let these people tell us, because especially when we're just dealing with corporations and people that are not necessarily our friends and just trying to make a dollar, at the end of the day, if we don't tell them, they'll assume. Even the IRS says that on their forms with most of their documents. If you do not tell them, they will assume that you want to be disregarded entity. They will assume, because they don't structure you, you structure you. And the same thing with trust. You have to structure how you want your trust to be set up. That's in your control. I thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
God,
thank
it
you,
was so
thank you,
fun.
thank you. Please, can you share with us like how we can not only connect with you, but what are your offerings?
Yes, absolutely. So you guys could definitely connect with me either by phone, you could call me, right? I will pick up the phone. So the number is on the screen, right? 305-749-9215. I have a website, The Wealthy Trustee. I help people set up trusts, right? I help them set up an unincorporated business trust. So these are non-statutory common law trusts. So an unincorporated business trust, a private family trust, and the 508c1a tax exempt trust. So those are the three trusts that I help people set up. And then I just also educate them. So I have a course. So you can find it on thewealthytrustee.com. And with the course, you pretty much learn the ins and outs. So I go through like every single paragraph in the trust. I teach you how to operate the trust, because that's one thing that I've seen in the industry is that people don't know how to operate. They'll just go, to a lawyer or an accountant and get it set up, and then they are asked out. Like they don't know the first thing or the second thing or the last thing to do. So that's where I focus. I focus on teaching you how to be a trustee and operate your trust. Pretty much holding your hand throughout the process when it comes to you actually transferring your assets, because I feel like that's the most important thing, is actually transferring, getting it done, right? Being your accountability partner and getting it done. You guys can send me an email if you have any questions, right? I don't bite. So info@7waystowealth.com. And then you can hit me up on social media. So I got my personal page on there. There's a lot of juicy content. So I am Christina Ivette. And then I got my business page on there, the number 7 Ways to Wealth. So there's, a bunch of information about trust. I have a YouTube channel. So I teach, I just teach you the ins and outs. So if you feel like, like you got cold feet, you don't know if you need a trust or whatever, just go to my YouTube channel and you can start, diving in deep and learning and seeing if this is something that you really want to execute. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you guys like what a trust looks like. I have an example here. There we go. So this is just an example of a trust. Like I told you, all the trusts are different, right? So this, you put a name of the trust, you have your declaration, your indentures, right? And then these are pretty much, this is your declaration, and then you have your, your bylaws. So this is pretty much telling you the do's and don'ts of your trust, how it's operated, exactly what's going on, who are the parties involved, and things of that nature, right? If you have any restrictions with your beneficiaries, whatever it is, right? All of your powers as a trustee, all of that stuff is in here. And this is like tailor-made. So like your trust is going to be different from your brother's trust, right? You have to, put what you want into it. But the contents, the actual bones or the are still the same, but everyone is different. So this is pretty much what it looks like. And then I'll scroll down to the bottom. You just get it notarized, right? Like Dionne said, you need a notary on your corner, right? So the grantor signs, the trustee signs, you get it notarized, you create your certificates of your trust certificates units, and determine who your beneficiaries are, right? So that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's an expensive piece of paper, and you could decide to use it to the fullest like the government is doing, or you could decide to let it collect dust. So it's up to you. But yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. So send me an email or call me or hit me up on Instagram. Thank you, Dionne. I really, really, really appreciate being here tonight. It was such a blast.
I appreciate you. Can you take one question? Brianna has her hand raised.
Hey, Brianna.
Hey, I'm sorry. It was actually in reference to earlier about the secure party creditor question. Secure party creditor discussion.
What was the-
I honestly can't remember. But basically somebody in the chat asked me about my comment regards doing a UCC1 filing. So that was really why I raised my hand.
Oh, I see. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christina. Appreciate. Oh, well, Lisa, Lisa, and then we're gonna let Christina go get to her babies.
Hello.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. I wanted to ask real quick about, you said something about if you already have a trust, you can add it to your insurance if you already have insurance. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, do you already have a trust and you already have a policy?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, I have a irrevocable spendthrift family trust.
Mhm.
And I was gonna get with you on this because it's gonna be a lot of depth and details that I wanted to ask you, but like if you already have a trust, do you think that you need it? Because this is irrevocable. And I know you said there's things that you can't change in here, which I already know, but you're right, because I really don't know how to run this trust. So I probably have to get with you and, about everything that's in this trust to see if I'm even, going the right way with all this.
Are you the grantor?
I think I am the trustee in the trust.
Okay, so typically, every single trust is different, so you have to really see the contents of your trust. But if it's an irrevocable trust and you're not the grantor, then you should be able to make amendments. So you should be able to make changes. So when it comes to irrevocable, it's only irrevocable for one party, not for, it's not for the trustee, it's for the grantor. So if you're not the grantor, then you can make changes, but you actually putting your insurance into the trust is not you making a change. So you're not like, amending anything. So you're just operating the trust. So all you have to do is, have minutes, and you're just saying that you are going to become the owner of the policy. So you have to contact whoever your insurance company is, and you have to let them know that you want to change the ownership. So like currently on your policy, are you the owner?
It's on my life insurance.
Are you the owner?
Yes, I am, and I go through Lincoln Financial, I think.
Okay, so then you just call Lincoln Financial, tell them that you want to change the owner, that you no longer want to be the owner, you want the trust entity to be the owner, and they'll send you the documents that you need. You'll fill them out, submit them, and however long it takes them to process it. But you also want the trust to be the beneficiaries, especially if it's a family trust. You want to also change the beneficiary. So you currently have beneficiaries on there. So whoever they are, you'll remove them and you'll put your trust as a beneficiary. So it's a very process, but you have to contact your insurance company to get it started.
Okay, and I am the trustee. It says that I'm the trustee and the initial compliance steward. That's what it says.
Okay, that's perfect. So you're good. And so if you need to make any amendments, you can, but just make sure that it says it in there. Okay. Like for my irrevocable trust, it says that it is amendable. The trustee can make amendments. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to be getting with you. So, but thank you for
sounds good,
tonight.
Lisa.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. That was a good question. You have a good night too.
You too.